Good evening. It's good to be with you this evening. This evening, I'm going to be talking about what should we eat. Now, throughout the health series, you know that in many of our different presentations, we have mentioned a little bit here and there about what you should eat and the benefits of certain foods. But I wanted to try to tonight be a little bit more specific about what we should eat. So some of this you have heard before, perhaps if you've been to some of the other presentations. But as I said, I'd like to make it a little bit more detailed, and then also talk about some myths about nutrition and health that for some reason, continue to float around in our popular culture. The father of modern medicine was an ancient Greek physician named Hippocrates. So, when you go to medical school, you learn a lot about, the origins of Western medicine and what Hippocrates said. And one of the things that's a very famous statement by him is he said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." And, this statement just tells us that what we eat is very important. You know this already, but Hippocrates went so far as to say this is like your medicine. So if you eat right, that can actually help, prevent and treat a multitude of diseases. Now, I know we're in the Philippines, but I just wanted to show you something about some of the top food sources that people in the United States eat. And unfortunately, this is not good. This is unfortunate. And I just wanted to show you, this is from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. About every 5 years or so in the United States, they interview Americans about what do you eat? What are your eating habits? And so this is from this survey. And if you notice, there's something interesting about this list of foods. So this is basically foods that Americans eat the most to get their energy. And if you noticed something interesting about this short list, there's no fruits and vegetables on here. Have you noticed that? It's desserts, breads, chicken dishes, soda and energy drinks, and pizza. So when I had initially seen this list, I thought, wow, this is so, so sad. And I thought, this is partially the root of why Americans have so many problems with chronic diseases today. Now, if you've been here through many of our nights, you know that I showed this slide a few nights ago, and this is actually from last year, I believe. This is a survey of the 20 most commonly consumed food products in Filipino households. Now, you can look at this and see if this is similar to your household or not, but I would say this is a little bit better than I think what American people eat. I do see some vegetables and fruits on here, but you can see that kind of throughout the world, eating habits are somewhat similar. I would say most of us, including myself, can do better, than what we're currently doing. And one of the recommendations that the U.S. government, the Department of Agriculture, and the Food and Drug Administration give almost every time they give food recommendations is they say, we should all eat nutrient-dense foods. That means foods that have a lot of nutrition. For some of you who, are interested in counting calories and watching your weight, one of the things is, how many calories are in this food that I'm eating? But at the same time, you should also be thinking, how much nutrition is in the food that I'm eating? Am I getting my money's worth of nutrition? My money's worth of fruits and vegetables and vitamins and minerals, and fiber. Is that in my food that I'm eating? So these recommendations are very similar in the U.S. to also the nutritional guidelines for the Philippines. And when I was looking this up on the internet, the most recent guidelines I saw for Filipinos was 2012. In the US, we do guidelines about every 5 years, and I'm not sure how it is in the Philippines, but these were the most recent guidelines I found, not too old. So there were 10, so I'm just gonna briefly go through the 10 here. Number 1 says, eat a variety of foods every day to get the nutrients needed by the body. So one key thing here is eat a variety of foods. Don't eat the same thing every day. And as you eat a variety, you will get a variety of nutrients, and hopefully you'll get, in that process, all the nutrients you need. The second one is about breastfeeding. In modern times, it's pretty well known, I think, internationally, that breastfeeding is beneficial, for infants and, very, very young children. I had an interesting conversation with my mother some years ago, and, she said to me that when I was a baby, she said the prevailing kind of advice in the medical and health community was not to breastfeed. Actually, that it was more healthy to give your babies like formula, that you buy at the store. But we know today that that's not true. So I just mentioned that because even health and medical guidelines change over time as we get more information. But definitely we know today that breastfeeding is so healthy for infants. And so here's a recommendation for breastfeeding for young children. Number 3, eat more vegetables and fruits every day. This is we know this, to get essential vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Number 4, consume fish, lean meat, poultry, eggs, dried beans, or nuts daily for growth and repair of body tissues. So another way to say number 4 is kind of eat enough protein, right? Because protein is, as we know today in modern times, is thought to be some of the building blocks for growth and also for repair of body tissues. Number 5 talks about consume milk and other calcium-rich foods for healthy bones and teeth. Number 6, consume safe foods and water to prevent diarrhea and other food and waterborne diseases. Number 7, use iodized salt to prevent iodine deficiency disorders. We also have iodized salt too in the United States. The thought was, I think many years ago, that many people don't get enough iodine in their diet, and so they put iodine actually in salt. Number 8, limit intake of salty, fried, fatty, and sugar-rich foods to prevent cardiovascular or heart diseases. And 2 more. Number 9, attain normal body weight through proper diet and moderate physical activity to prevent obesity and maintain good health. And number 10 is be physically active, make good healthy food choices, manage stress. We talked about stress last night. Avoid alcoholic beverages, and don't smoke, right? So all of these are like very good, solid health recommendations from the, I think this is the National Nutrition Council of the Philippines here. So in the United States and in the Philippines too, food recommendations have evolved over time as we have more knowledge and understanding. And this is just kind of a timeline of how Filipino food guidelines have evolved and progressed. The latest ones you can see is in the form of a plate here. And previously, before, there were all these food pyramids, right? You may remember this with at the very bottom of the pyramid is foods you should eat the most, and then at the top, foods you should eat the least. And that's kind of evolved now into this like plate. Like, what should you actually have on your plate at each meal? And so I actually like the plate model because it's kind of practical. You just look at your plate and you think, am I eating the right food? So here is what it looks like for the Philippines most recently. So if you look, this plate is divided into 4 different sections. I don't know if you've ever seen this before. You may have seen this. And so basically to interpret this, and the recommendations for the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture plate, is very similar. I'm just going to show you briefly. But you can see that half of your plate in the U.S. is fruits and vegetables. So this is kind of a pretty common recommendation. If we go back here, you can see it's the same in the Philippines, right? On the right side, you see like a banana here representing fruits. And then below, you see like some leafy vegetable, looks like. So this is fruits and vegetables occupying half the plate. And then what do you think this is on the bottom left? I'm going to try to show you here. Right here, what do you think this is? Rice? Okay, right. I think it's rice too. But this basically represents grains. So they're recommending you eat grains. And then you have fish here. So I think this is a recommendation for protein, is my understanding. And so if you look here, you have a similar recommendation, right? Fruits, vegetables, grains, and protein. And then the US plate, they add a little dairy here. The United States, very heavy dairy consumption kind of nation. Here, I think this is a glass of water. And actually, I think water is a better option. But anyway, it's very similar, right? You can see that the universal recommendations pretty much are eat lots of fruits and vegetables, So think back to what you ate today. Just think back to like what you ate for breakfast, what you ate for lunch. And I don't know if you had dinner yet, but if you've had dinner, whatever your most recent meal was, and just think, did you follow this guideline today? Did you eat half of your plate of fruits and vegetables, some grains, and some protein? So if you did, excellent. And if not, then this is something that you can work on. So as I mentioned, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the dietary guidelines are published every 5 years, and they actually were just published in 2015, so just 1 year ago. So these are a little bit older guidelines, but I just wanted to mention that, the Department of Agriculture and the government has been very worried about Americans eating a poor diet and not being very active, and that is contributing to many diseases in society. This is actually from last year. This shows basically what areas are lacking in the American diet. Just to give you an example, anything in orange means you're not eating enough or you're eating too much. So orange is any kind of extreme. So you can see Americans don't eat enough vegetables or fruits or grains, and they probably eat too much added sugars and saturated fat and salt. And in a few things they're doing okay, but there's a lot that needs to be improved. The other thing I want to mention too is, again, this is the US, but even young children, and I feel so sad about this, even very young children are not eating good diets in the US. So they say here, 25% of toddlers, as young children age 1 to 2 years old, 12 to 24 months, they're not eating a single serving of fruit on a day. 30% of them don't eat a single vegetable. So I hope this is not true in the Philippines. I hope your very, very young children and growing children are eating fruits and vegetables, because this is terrible. And this probably just reflects that the habits of parents are, they're not really eating fruits and vegetables, so the young children are not eating fruits or vegetables either. So again, the guidelines and recommendations are to eat nutrient-dense foods, to eat foods with a lot of nutrition. Now, I know that this is kind of hard to see, but there are some people in the medical and nutrition community that, they kind of try to give meaning to the different amounts and types of nutritions in foods. Now, there's no need for you to memorize this or anything like that, but this is actually to just show you. This is called an Andes score. So a group of nutrition interested professionals just in the US looked at certain foods and their nutritional value. And what I just wanted to point out for you is in their, by their categorization, some of the most nutritious foods you can notice are like dark green leafy vegetables. And the Philippines has its own unique vegetables that are leafy green. But those tend to be very, very high in nutritional value if you're thinking about nutrient density. And then what's really low in nutrient value, you can already predict, right? Things like cola and vanilla ice cream, potato chips, etc. So a lot of your refined foods have very little nutrient density. So you know that I have talked about before in some of our presentations on heart disease, diabetes, cancer, that we recommend for fruits and vegetables, you eat a wide variety of colors. And a little bit later, I'm going to talk about what do these colors mean? Do they're just pretty? But they're pretty and attractive, but actually they have different nutrient value in the color themselves. You know that I have advocated legumes and beans. Beans are an excellent source of non-animal derived protein. They have a lot of fiber. If you remember, we talked about they have lots of fiber, whole grains, mushrooms, especially as anti-cancer type foods, and omega-3 containing foods, and good water. And then what to avoid eating. We have talked about this. Especially, I want to encourage you, especially, if you one of your weaknesses are refined carbohydrates, so pastries and pasta that's not whole grain, white breads, etc., cakes. These, again, are foods that don't have much nutritional value. I know that they can taste good, but if you think about it, you're getting calories without very much nutrition, and frequently a lot of sugar and fat. So I would say, if this is kind of your weakness, at the very least, think about cutting back, on eating these types of foods. I'm going to talk a little bit more about meat and then sodas here in a minute. So how much fruits and vegetables should we eat? So just to give you some idea, we already talked about it should be about half your plate, right, for each meal. So at least 50%. Another way to look at it is the Harvard School of Public Health recommends at least 9 servings a day. And generally, 1 serving is considered about half a cup. So it's not a lot. It's not that much. Half a cup is, if you measure it out, it's not that much. But that is 1 serving. So 9 servings, that's actually a lot, right? But, if half of your plate is fruits and vegetables, that is not that hard to do. If you eat 3 meals a day, and, it will not be that hard to do. Unfortunately, Americans don't even eat half of the recommended servings of fruits and vegetables. So again, this is kind of a very pitiful situation in the United States. Because of that, in the New England Journal of Medicine, this is a very respected medical journal in the United States, they have said that it may be that this generation of Americans in the 21st century may be the first generation in history where children live shorter lives than their parents. Up until now, all generations have lived a little bit longer, because of the conveniences of modern life and availability of good foods. But they have actually said that it may be that just because of the way people's lifestyles are, less active, the way people's diets are, they're not eating enough fruits and vegetables and nutrient-dense foods, this may be the first generation in the United States that children live not as long as their parents did. So that's really sad if you think about it, because they have every opportunity to live, long, healthy lives, but just from lifestyle, they may not end up living as long as their parents. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of water. So we're talking a lot about fruits and vegetables and grains and beans, and I don't want you to forget about the best beverage that you can drink, which is water. So how much should you drink, first of all? So it does vary. Obviously, it depends, on your size. It depends on your activity level. If you're someone who's very active and you are, sweating a lot and you need more repletion of water, then you may need to drink more. But on average, for the average adult, you should be drinking about 8 glasses of water a day. And that's a lot, right? That's quite a bit. So a lot of the water bottles they sell are about 500 cc's, 500 milliliters. So 8 glasses is almost 2 liters. So you should be drinking about 4 of those, 500 milliliter bottles a day. As we know, the human body is mostly water. The human brain is mostly water. And they have found that people who drink, sufficient water tend to have lower rates of certain types of cancer, like bladder cancer, and they also actually have less risk of heart attack. I don't have time this evening, but they've done some studies of certain groups of Americans. They found that those who drink more water actually significantly reduce their risk of having a heart attack. So there's so many benefits of water, right? You know that pure, good water is good for you. It makes your blood thinner, so not so thick. If any of you have ever had kidney stones, it reduces your risk. Kidney stones are terrible. I've never had one, but I've taken care of patients in the hospital who have kidney stones, and they have frequently told me that the pain is worse than childbirth. So it's very painful. So it decreases your risk of kidney stones. It helps you have nice skin. It prevents or relieves constipation, so you can go to the bathroom regularly. It flushes out toxins. And one way to know if you are drinking enough water is, when you urinate, you just see. Your urine actually should be very clear, like almost like the color of water. And water has no color, right? If it's very yellow, this means that you're not drinking enough water and you need to drink more water. So this is one way to know. So when should you drink water? I just wanted to give you a few recommendations about when. So I try to drink enough water, and when I wake up in the morning, I drink about 2 or 3 glasses of water right away when I wake up. I just go to the kitchen and drink water. And this is how I wake up. I know some people, they wake up in the morning and they make coffee, right? And then they drink and it makes them awake. But if you drink coffee, or if you don't drink any water in the morning and you have trouble waking up, just try it. Just wake up in the morning and drink some water, and you'll be amazed. Like, you'll just wake up. And so it really helps you wake up, like, mentally. And also helps, activate your organs internally. So, you drink water and your stomach is like, okay, time to wake up and get ready to eat breakfast. So this is a good habit to do. The other thing you might consider is a lot of people will drink water with their meals. They'll have a glass of water as they eat. I would challenge you to think about eating or drinking water maybe about half an hour to 45 minutes before you eat your meal. The reason is this. Think about this. When you start eating food, you chew your food, it goes into your stomach. Your stomach has a very acidic environment. Like the pH, the acid level in your stomach is about 2, so it's very acidic. And so that partially helps to digest your food. But if you drink a lot of water with your food, what happens is that dilutes out the pH of the stomach, right? Because, if you remember from chemistry class, right, you have a pH of 2 and you pour in water and the pH goes up, right? So for some people who are sensitive, that can actually dilute out your stomach acid, and it can interfere with your digestion. So a lot of times for people, especially people who are sensitive with their digestion, it's helpful to drink water a little bit before your meal. The other thing too is they have found that people who drink water before they go to sleep, just a little bit, not too much to where you have to wake up every night to go to the bathroom, but if you drink a little, they found that actually helps avoid stroke or heart attack in the middle of the night. That makes your blood a little bit thinner and also helps regulate your blood pressure better. So briefly I want to talk about soda. So soda, as we talked about earlier, is not really a nutrient-dense food, right? There's really not much nutrition in soda. And some people have said to me, well, what about diet soda? I know like sugar's bad for you, so diet soda, is from artificial sweeteners and there's no calories, and isn't that a little bit better? So actually, what they're found with more recent research is diet soda is actually worse than regular soda. Some of these artificial sweeteners today, they found that they actually contribute to more weight gain and other problems, increased risk of diabetes, etc. So I would say it's better not to drink soda and definitely cut back on your consumption of soda, but I just want to say diet soda is not better. Yeah, so I would almost say if you're going to drink soda, it's better to drink regular soda, but it's better not to drink soda. All right, I'm going to skip a few things here. So I wanted to talk about how much protein we need, and this is related to, many people say to me, you're always talking about a plant-based diet, and like a vegetarian diet, perhaps, but I don't think I'm going to get enough protein if I just eat lots of vegetables and fruits all the time. So this is one thing I wanted to clear up. So first thing, how much protein do we need every day? So the World Health Organization recommendations and the US recommended daily allowance for protein is very similar. So you can see it's based on your weight. So if you weigh less, you generally need less protein. If you weigh more, you need more. But about 0.75 grams of protein per kilogram. So for me, I think I weigh about 45 kilos. So I need about 33 or so grams of protein per day. If you weigh, let's say, 70 kilos, you probably need about 53 or so grams of protein per day. So it depends on your weight. And your protein should be about 10 to 15% of your daily calories. So the question, if you eat a plant-based diet, with mostly plants, will you get enough protein? So the answer to this is yes. And it's not just yes because I said so. It's yes because, many nutritionists and people in the medical field do all agree with this. This is not disputed, that even when you eat a plant-based diet, you can get enough protein. And actually, the problem, at least in the United States, I actually don't know about the Philippines, but in the United States, most Americans consume too much protein. And actually, too much protein is a problem. They actually say that Americans probably consume twice as much protein as they need. And that is a problem. So why is that a problem? Actually, if you eat too much protein, it makes your kidneys work harder because kidneys filter some of the waste products that comes from protein, which is called urea. And so also, if you don't use the protein that you consume right away, the protein is stored as fat. So if you eat too much protein, you don't use it all, by running a marathon or something, then you're going to store it as fat, which is not good. So the other thing people ask me is, okay, well, what about complete proteins, right? Because they're like, you can only get complete proteins from meat, and meat sources, animal sources, and, plants don't have complete proteins. So let's talk about that. What is a complete protein? So a complete protein means that it contains all of the 9 essential amino acids that we need to get, for complete nutrition for protein. And essential meaning that our body doesn't make 9 amino acids that we need. We have to eat it from food, but there are 12 amino acids that your body makes that you don't have to get from food. So some people say, well, only animal proteins are complete, so I need to eat some animal products. But I will tell you that's a myth. There are plant-based sources of complete protein. There are some of them. Probably one of the most common ones in Asian countries is soy. Soy is actually complete plant protein. And there are some other ones I've listed here as well. The other thing too is, as long as you eat, again, a balanced diet, so you eat a variety of foods, you will get all the amino acids and the complete proteins that you need. And I have some examples here. So if you eat beans or legumes and you eat grains, they have kind of complementary amino acids. And this is why, again, it's important to eat a wide variety of foods, not eating the same thing every day. So just quickly here, these are just some labels of certain types of foods and then the different amounts of protein in them. It's definitely true that animal proteins have more protein. We cannot dispute this. But one thing, again, to remember is if you do eat a very heavy animal-based protein diet, you will have some risk for eating too much protein. And as we said, that's not a good thing. So just some examples. You can see lentils and beans have quite a bit of protein. Tofu has a lot. And certain foods like coconut and spinach. And here again, just some beans and their different protein values. So beans in general tend to have a fair amount of protein. So again, the question of, do you really need meat to get protein? And so here they've done a comparison about per 100 calories, does beef or broccoli have more protein? And they said, per the same amount of calories, actually broccoli has more protein. So I do want to talk a little bit about additional dangers of too much animal protein in the diet. So one other thing is, if you eat too many animal proteins in the diet, you tend to shift your body into a more acidic environment. As you know, like our bodies, if you think back to chemistry, you have acid and you have base or alkaline, right? So our bodies tend to be ideally more on the base side. And so the pH generally is above 7. Actually, the ideal pH of the body, specifically the blood, is somewhere between 7.35 and 7.45. So if your body is too acidic, that is definitely a range that puts you more at risk for diseases, all kinds of inflammatory diseases. And so you want to always be more alkaline. I don't know if you've seen there's so many advertisements for like alkaline foods, even alkaline water and things like that. So that's the reason for that, is this understanding that your body should be more alkaline or basic than acidic. Now, if you do eat too much animal proteins, one of the problems is your body tries to neutralize the acid, and it does that by drawing calcium out into your blood, and it gets the calcium from your bones. So unfortunately, what happens is it does get neutralized, but you're losing calcium out of your bones. If that happens for a long time, that can actually, make your bones weak, and you can develop osteoporosis and other problems like that. Many years ago, in the US, there was a really famous diet called the Atkins diet. You may have heard of it here too, but it was a diet based on eating like very high protein diet to lose weight. And the problem was that all of these people on this diet, they found, were putting out like a lot of calcium, and so they were losing a great deal of calcium. And so there were problems with this diet, and it's not really popular in the US anymore. Now, I do briefly want to talk to you about the link between excess protein and liver cancer, and also a toxin called aflatoxin. So there's a very famous book. If you ever have some interest in looking at a lot of very unique connections between diet and disease, I would recommend this book called The China Study. This was a New York Times bestseller by Dr. Colin Campbell. He's actually a famous doctor of nutrition at Cornell University in the United States. And he was part of the largest study that's ever been done that deals with the relationship between diet and then the risk of developing certain diseases like cancer and heart disease, etc. So in this book, he actually talks about some work he did actually in the Philippines. And I think this was in the, I want to say 1960s and 1970s. So he was here in the Philippines, and he actually was part of a, I think, government-subsidized program. This was during the time that President Marcos was president. And he actually worked closely with President Marcos's medical advisor. So the project that Dr. Campbell was doing was actually, he was looking to see, what kind of not expensive but good nutritional foods can we develop and offer to, poor Filipino children at that time in the 1960s and 1970s. And one of the things they were looking at was to make some kind of nutritious food from peanuts. And as they were, looking to develop these types of foods, they did some studies on young children. And one of the things that Dr. Campbell was really amazed about was he saw all of these young children, like younger than the age of 10, dying from liver cancer. Now, that was really unusual because in the United States, liver cancer is a disease of older adults, They tend to get it because of, drinking alcohol or hepatitis B or hepatitis C. So usually it develops, later in life and certainly not before the age of 10. So he was just wondering, what is going on here in the Philippines? Why are these young children dying from liver cancer? And so he looked into this. The other thing he found that was very strange was that these children that were dying of liver cancer were not from poor families. They were actually from very wealthy families. And so he thought that is really strange too. They just could not figure out the link. So what they found was this. Now, obviously, you know that you cannot do experiments on young children, right? That is unethical. But they did do some experiments on rats, and they found certain connections to why, what they were seeing might be the case. So they did studies where they looked at rats who were fed aflatoxin. Now, I just want to explain what aflatoxin is. Aflatoxin is one of the most deadly toxins in nature that is associated with cancer, that's found in nature. And it's actually found in peanuts that are, stored in moldy conditions. So they're not in regular peanuts. I don't want you to think peanuts are bad. But they are in peanuts that, if they're not stored properly, they develop mold, and then this mold contains this, cancer-causing agent called aflatoxin. So they fed rats aflatoxin, and so the same amount, but one group, actually they fed a diet of 20% protein, and then another group of rats, they fed 5% protein. The very interesting thing was, the rats that were fed 20% protein all developed liver cancer because, they were given aflatoxin. But the rats that were only fed 5% protein did not develop liver cancer. So that was kind of astounding. It was just a difference in the amount of protein in the diets. But one group developed it and one group did not. Now, the other thing they did is, so in the first groups, these were animal proteins that they fed to the rats, but subsequently, they also did trials where they fed them non-animal based proteins like soy protein. And with the plant-based proteins, the rats did not develop cancer. And so that was interesting too. They were like, oh, there's a difference in the type of protein as well. So this is something to think about, because the thought is that, and the sort of link they saw was that one of the factors for your risk for these young children of developing liver cancer at young ages was the fact that probably the children in affluent, wealthy homes probably were eating a richer diet, probably were eating more animal proteins as well as other types of foods. And the thought was that this may have increased their risk for developing cancer at such a young age, in addition to being exposed to aflatoxin. So another myth that I want to bring to your attention is, does milk promote strong bones? In the United States, the dairy industry is very powerful, and there's always these commercials about drink milk, it will give you strong bones and healthy teeth. So I just want to point out, this is a nutritional myth as well. So Americans drink more milk than probably almost, minus a few, than most countries in the world. As I said, there's a very strong and vibrant dairy industry, and so milk is heavily promoted in the United States. So if this were true, then if it promotes strong bones and good teeth, then you should probably see the lowest rates of things like hip fractures and other broken bones in the United States, but that is not the case. So especially for postmenopausal women and older women, women who no longer have menstrual cycles, etc., these women in the US have the highest rates of hip fractures in the world. And so other countries, Australia, New Zealand, Sweden, Norway, also have similar rates of hip fractures, and they also actually consume quite a bit of dairy. Now, some of our Asian countries, Thailand and China, etc., where they have lower levels of protein intake from all sources, including animal sources, they actually have lower incidences of hip fractures. So the connection of drinking milk and dairy products and having strong bones is not a connection that we should be making. So there are ways, though, to avoid or to promote strong bones. So getting enough vitamin K, this is actually a vitamin that will help promote strong, healthy bones, found in many, especially green leafy vegetables. Exercising will promote healthy bones. Avoiding caffeine one thing you should know about caffeine is that the more caffeine you drink, the more it promotes calcium loss from your body. So the more caffeine you ingest, the more that if you were to check a urine sample, you would see calcium kind of leaching out of your body. And then avoiding too much vitamin A. Now, I will say this, if you eat a well-balanced plant-based diet, you won't get too much vitamin A, but I think here they're talking about if you take supplements or vitamins. Okay, so you've seen these types of slides before. What to avoid eating. This is just to imprint it in your mind. Refined carbohydrates, meat, sodas, etc. And then what to eat, we've talked about. So here as I end, I talked about how you should eat kind of the rainbow. And not just because it looks nice, but because all the different colors actually have nutrient meaning. And so, and you know, this is not comprehensive, but a lot of red foods are good for the blood. Orange and yellow foods tend to be anti-inflammatory. Green foods tend to balance out your pH. Blue foods tend to stimulate your immune system, and purple foods tend to help you live longer. Okay, and I'm going to go through this. I'm just going to highlight one thing about eggplants. I don't know if you remember, if you were here the first night, I talked a little bit about eggplants. And, you know, there are actually two things in eggplants that I highlighted. I mean, eggplants have multiple benefits, but two of the things here were chlorogenic acid and this niacin that we talked about. And these are actually anti-cancer agents. They're antioxidants, but they also have a key role in helping to destroy cancer cells. So this is just one highlight. I mean, if we were to go through multiple vegetables, they all have their very unique properties. Many vegetables and fruits contain antioxidants. And so they're both anti-inflammatory as well as having lots of vitamins and minerals. Okay. So as I end here, now you may be thinking like, wow, like it just seems kind of extreme. So are you saying, you know, I can't eat meat and I can't, you know, eat foods that I like that taste good. I just have to eat like vegetables, you know, and fruits and that's it. So this is what I want to say. When I give you these recommendations, it's not to discourage you, but it's actually to encourage you. And everyone is different. I know that some people, you know, they will kind of say, I need to change everything. And, you know, you will make dramatic changes. And other people may say, well, I just want to change maybe one thing at a time. And either way is okay. You know, as long as you make a change and step forward in making changes that will be positive for your health. So as an example, you know, if you're like, yeah, you know I'm not eating enough fruits and vegetables, then I would challenge you, you know, for each meal, eat one extra fruit or vegetable. If you know you're not drinking enough water, then I would say, you know, when you wake up in the morning, start your day by drinking some water. If you're like, you know I do eat too much meat, you know, in the US, there is a movement called Meatless Mondays. And what that is some people have said, okay, you know, I need to eat more healthfully, so I'm not going to eat meat on Monday. Or some people will say, like, I'm not going to eat meat after a certain time in the evening, or something like that. So I would say, for some of you, you may just want to start by making some small changes. And other people may say, like, no, I just want to make a lot of changes, you know, I want to change everything. Either way, I think, is okay, because everyone is different. As long, again, as you make some positive changes towards your health, with the ultimate goal of, you know, making long-term changes for your health. So I just want to end here with a Bible verse I really like. Ecclesiastes was written by the wisest man who ever lived, and that was King Solomon. And this is what he said: "Blessed art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles, and thy princes eat in due season, for strength and not for drunkenness." So my challenge for you tonight is, you know, we should enjoy eating. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but honestly, even the Bible promotes that we should eat for strength, for physical strength, so that we can, bless others, bless our families, bless our community, and not for drunkenness, because, as the Apostle Paul says, our body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. So this is my challenge for you tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm going to be talking about depression, and then the following night, our last night, I'm going to be talking about a really fun subject, the subject of the secrets of living a long life. I'm going to be talking about 5 areas in the world called the blue zones, where people live the longest of anywhere in the world. And actually, I'm from one of those places, so I can give you some first-hand accounts. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow night and the following night. Thank you very much.
Coming Broadcasting Network.